Welcome back, friends, to the shop. As predicted, the storm hit, and man, does it hit with a vengeance. We have, we have snow stacking up like crazy, so that brings us into the wood shop. So I've been kind of waiting for an opportunity to unveil this. Believe it or not, there's a new budget hand plane I found on Amazon. That's an Amazon Basics, and the price was $29, and it looks like a traditional Stanley number 4. I thought we would take a look at it today, see how well or how bad it's built, and try it out to see if this is an option for guys that are getting into woodworking and maybe on a budget. So let's do a quick unboxing, and then we'll set it up and see how it runs. What does a guy get for $29? You guys don't know the temptation, how hard it is for me not to jump into this stuff early when these boxes come, but I think it's important to look at things together to get that initial first impression. So it's heavy. It definitely has a bit of a Chinesium smell to it. So here, for your viewing pleasure, here we have an original number 4. So this is the one, it says right there, number 4. This is the one that is probably what it's modeled after. And you can see there, pretty similar. Actually, it's actually bigger, isn't it? It's a little bit longer. No, it is. It's just a tiny bit longer, but very similar right there from the front. Of course, the original one would have had the rosewood handles. This one is what I would call not restored, but it's the one that I haven't set it up, meaning I haven't flattened or anything. I've just de-rusted it, and this is in its current condition right here. But the original one would have had the rosewood handle. I don't know what we have there. Something I just don't know. The latch, instead of that, we have here just a thumb screw. Could that really be brass? Unfortunately not. I was afraid of that when I first saw it. I thought, how cool would that be if the hardware components were brass? You know, the original Stanley would have certainly, all those pieces would have been brass, but the fact that it's magnetic means that it just has a fake brass coating on it. But even down to look at that, even down to the mount to hold the adjustment for the frog is there as well. A lot of similarities there, guys. A lot of similarities, but it is bigger. Definitely bigger. Here we have our cap. It is very lightweight, so it's it's probably some sort of a pot metal. Amazon Basics. How do they determine what they're in the future, is everything going to be an Amazon Basic? It seems like such a random thing. I mean, I can understand like USB cables and stuff, but this is so strange. Very lightweight, probably not the best metal. And here, of course, is the important part. The chip breaker and the iron. Who knows what we have here? Definitely, it looks like a tool steel of some sort. We'll have to sharpen this real quick and reprofile that, make sure that it's working good. This is, what is that? It is magnetic. It's very thin. Chip breaker seems adequate. This definitely has a tool steel look to it, and it's sharp. No question that it's sharp. Here we have the frog. If you were looking at it, you would think it was a Stanley. The machining there at the throat is is pretty nasty. Not a lot of consistencies there. The way everything sits, it's a little bit crooked, but $29, it's not too bad. It'd be really interesting to see here, and we'll check it in a minute, how flat the base is, because that's the most important part. This other stuff and these coated pot metal or whatever is insignificant. This is the most important part, the foundation of it. Handles look good. Are these brass screws? No, they are not. There's no brass on this. It's all just coating. It's just cosmetics to look like a Stanley. If you ever want to make something flat, a piece of tempered glass is the solution. This is how you go about flattening these things. This is just a piece of wet dry sandpaper, and I'm not going to go to the trouble of flattening it right now. I probably never will, to be honest with you, because I have better planes. I just don't need to spend 8 hours doing this. But this will just tell us very quickly how well it was machined. Okay, right there now we can see every place that it came into contact with the sandpaper. We're high here, and we're high here, and along the toe of that. The rest of this all is concaved or has a belly in it. So it's not what I would call precision machining, but not that it couldn't be brought right there, a little bit away right there. So a guy given enough time and space with a piece of glass, with a wet, dry sandpaper and some water, you can work that down to see and make sure, ultimately, to get it flat. The diamond stones will tell us exactly what's what. So we have here the coarse and the fine and the super fine. And one of the most important things, as we know, is a flat back on our blades. So this will have to be done to get it to cut properly. If the back is not flat, then that's always a problem. Even on the nice ones, the higher end ones that I've received, as far as in also the chisels, I don't know that I've ever had one that's had a really flat back. So this is pretty common here. But let's see. That tells us really quickly. Can you see? You see that right there? So this one's pretty far out of spec there. We're touching here and not there. So we'll just keep going with this until that we have a grind all the way across there. So I've got a fair amount of time into this, and we still have a long ways to go. That's quite a ways off there. Let's put it over on the work sharp and speed things up. You can do this by hand. You can do this with the glass and the sandpaper like I showed you. It just comes down to time. Just you have to put your time in. It could take a couple evenings, but eventually you'll get it. But we can speed things up with a work sharp. I'm not opposed to using power tools on these blades, provided you don't overheat them. And one way to keep from overheating them is to keep your fingers on there. When you can't stand the heat from your finger, then cool it down. That looks better. That's sharp already. Okay, now let's check the bevel and see how well we did on that. And there's the super fine. I put the coarse paper back on. I should have did this all at once, but we want to machine this surface right here perfectly flat as well, because when we put the iron and the chip breaker together, those will mate together like that, and the better that connection is, that tighter that fit, more likely it's going to cut better. It doesn't get slivers and chunks and things in there, so we can. This is just basically sits flat. We can. That's as far as I'm going to go on this. There's not going to be anything left. You can see I still haven't got that resurfaced on that side right there, primarily because they didn't bend it right. It's not, you can see that's the main reason. It was just poorly machined. And we could, by the time we get that down there, this is going to be super flat. So it's kind of just the way it is. It's not a super big deal because now we have a very precise mating up there. But even so, you know, compared to like the Stanleys and stuff where this is super precise, this piece here is very poorly made. What I've learned over the years from doing this is getting these tools set right and learning how to properly sharpen and set them up. It's everything. And I think that's probably why, you know, guys might get a little bit discouraged on using the old tools, is you might buy something like this and you take it to your shop and you try to do work with it and it just doesn't perform well, and you just, I mean, I know that I did, you kind of assume that, well, these old things, you know, don't really have any value anymore, but they're just not, well, we've lost that ability to properly sharpen them and set them up. I mean, it's absolutely critical. It's everything. I mean, you can take a new Ford GT, and if the tire pressures aren't right, or you got, you know, just got a basic thing wrong with it, suspension setup, it's not going to perform well. And not only that, but it could be dangerous. So learning to set these things up, you know, once you take, even I would suspect here from my experience, even a $29 tool like this, if the time is taken to set up that chip breaker and that iron properly like we did and put a nice edge on it, it's most likely going to perform reasonably well. I'm not going to cut the Amazon Prime any slack here. We got a piece of rock hard oak, full 1 inch. The trick with these guys is to get that angle set there. We got a couple things going on here. We got to the correct depth set, how far that iron sticks out of the bottom of the hole, and more importantly is just as important is the angle, which will be set with this. If you look and see, you can probably see that moving back and forth. So how you do this is we don't want it sticking down too low, but we need it to catch a little bit as we're going to go side by side until we get an equal shaving, and that will tell us where we're set. So we'll loosen this cap screw up a little bit so we don't put a bind on the adjuster. One thing with this compared to like the Stanleys is that there's a lot of play, a lot of slop in there, but I would say it's still adequate once you get the hang of it. So we're going to spin this down until that blade comes in contact, and we're going to back it off a little bit. Okay, so we're going to go on the left side here and see what we get. I'm going to hit it a couple times because this chunk of oak is not flat yet. So you can kind of see the thickness. It's a pretty heavy, thick shaving there. Now if we go over to the other side, we're getting basically the same thing. If we compare these two guys right here, this is the right, this is the left, and feel them with your fingers, because your fingers are incredibly sensitive. You can feel even thickness like this. That's really close. I would say that's almost perfectly set. So what I'll do is we'll just leave it there. We'll tighten this down here to keep that from moving. And now we'll run across here. Now if you really want your tool to sing, now I need to address this because it comes up every time. Whenever I set a plane down flat on my bench, people go crazy. Oh, you can't set a plane down on a bench because it'll dull it. You need to set it on its side. That came about from shop teachers. Back in the day that had to keep like 20 of these things going, and kids would come down and set them on top of like a table saw, which is metal or cast iron. And so that's where that rule came about. You're perfectly fine if you're using your tool. If you're using it on a good wood surface like this, just set it down on its blade. It's not a problem. If you want to sit it down on your side, that's fine too. Now to really make them sing, of course, is I use the ballistol on a silicone, like a gun cleaning cloth. I keep it in here and keep that handy there, and that lubricates that, and it just glides like grease lightning. You can just immediately feel the difference. So let's take a moment and flatten this out. So what's the takeaway here? Well, I have no doubt, $29 if a guy's willing to put a little bit of elbow grease into it, flatten that bottom, do the irons and the chip breaker like I showed you, and you don't need all those fancy tools. You don't need to use that work sharp deal. You can do everything that I showed you with sandpaper and a piece of glass if money's tight. So that is an option. So if you don't mind putting a couple days of work in, you could get it up and running. So $29, that's what it came in at. You have several options here with this. Your next option is going to be to go with like a Stanley, the reproduction of the number 4. Now these are not as nice as the original ones, but they're still pretty good. I've done quite a few projects with them, and once I got it flattened and set up, I basically had to do the same thing to this one as I did to the $29 one. So time-wise, it was about the same. But this is going to run you probably a little over $100 or so. But it's a nice tool, no doubt. It has when you get it and take it out of the box and you feel it and you handle it, it's a very nice tool, no doubt. The other option is to get an original number 4. And I mean, really, to be honest with you, if you get an original number 4 that's in good condition, you're going to have to do the exact same thing you did to the Amazon Basics one. Everything that we did is going to be exactly the same, but you're going to have a really nice tool. You have something that's really special. That is, it's an heirloom tool, one that you'd be proud to hand down to your kids or grandkids. But there's a certain amount of time and effort that goes into that. But if you use products like we've used Evaporust in the past, you could basically take this thing, take the wood off of it, dunk it into Evaporust over 24 hours, pull it out, and that's almost all your work's already done for you without even, with no elbow grease whatsoever. Then you just go to flattening the back and doing a little final polish on things, and you have a really nice tool. And of course, the final option, if you want something that's absolutely turnkey out of the box, is like the Lee Nielsen tools, which now you're getting into the $300 and $400 range, but they are of the finest quality. And to be honest, a better tool than Stanley ever made. I mean, I'd make that argument. And when it comes to precision and machining and just, they're gorgeous. I have one. Mrs. W got one for me. It's just gorgeous, just gorgeous. So that's kind of your option. So would you be a fool to order this and have it if you're just a casual user or on a budget? I don't think so. I think it would be a great tool. As you saw, it just ripped right through that oak, no problem. It feels good in the hand, very ergonomic because it has, you know, stayed very true to the original, which was developed over hundreds of years. Just think of the man hours that went into coming up with this design. You know, these things don't just happen on their own. But I'd have to say, for 29 bucks, it's a pretty good deal, as long as you don't mind doing a little restoration work. Be interesting to see what else Amazon Basics comes out with. This is so strange to me. I mean, obviously there was someone put a lot of time into reproducing this, and it's not bad. It's actually, it's 30 bucks. It's a whole lot better than that other one, that cheap one, or that one that you're going to get at Home Depot, what I see so far. So that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Sorry guys, I had to restart my outro because I just about let out a big secret. So may God bless you and your families. Keep us in your prayers, and we'll see you guys on the next video.